It's my distinct honor to invite our chief guest for today's IR Summit, His Excellency Justice Ram Mohan Reddy, High Court of Karnataka, to present the inaugural address. Sir, may I request you to kindly address the gathering.
I am pretty honored to have been given this opportunity to be here with all of you, to share a few of my thoughts that I have formulated and cherished over a period of almost 30 plus years, both as an advocate practicing on the labor and other constitutional laws, and then as a judge, given all kinds of rosters, civil, criminal, labor, and all kinds of cases. Fortunately, having had confidence in the kind of work that I turn out, the Honorable Chief Justices in the past had asked me to handle many such matters. I distinctly remember a good number of matters of Toyota itself, which had come before me. And I know that there is no point in writing a judgment, because it's not going to help anybody. And judgment is only going to become a part of a process of appeal filing and God knows what else. And then there's going to be a hierarchy of courts where anything can happen. The point was not that. The point was, how do we bring about an amicable resolution to the disputes? Courts are not meant for judgment writing, as I can understand in today's scenario. Way back 77 when I started practice, of course Mr. B.C. Prabhakar was quite a senior lawyer by then, and we'd only looked at such lawyers to understand, try to emulate a little bit of whatever they did. Thanks to Mr. B.C. Prabhakar and his colleagues also. Some of his colleagues are here today, I see them. We all brush shoulders, not just to be with them, but also to understand how do we bring about resolution to disputes. Labor laws in 1977 onwards, we had Justice V.R. Krishnaiyer and Justice Reddy of the Supreme Court, who made a radical change to labor laws. It was more labor-oriented those days. If you look in retrospect, today's judgments are more oriented towards managements, and it's quite a topsy-turvy thing that's happened today. The reasons are manifold. I'm talking of 1977 and maybe in the 70s, it's just a very nascent country, a great democracy with just about 20 years or 30 years in the making, large number of workforce, totally unguided. We're all trying to, fill up those gaps wherever possible. So I keep saying, if there's a bucket and you have holes in it, you can fill it up. But you don't have the bottom, what are you going to do? That was the situation way back in 1977. We can't find fault with whatever was the labor laws and what was the kind of thinking of judges then. All said and done, it was as if there was this large labor force which was not protected by anybody. And therefore this was the thrust of the judges to say, look here, we are the protectors of these laborers. And that was the situation and scenario. Today we need not go back to that stage. Everything has a learning mechanism. We all fall, wake up, get up, we see some good things happening, we change, we adapt to situations. Today, I've been asked to come here to say something about Make in India challenges for sustainable industrial relations. This is not a small topic that could be discussed or said something about and then just walk away without anything. It's serious discussion. Make in India is small, but sustainable industrial relation is not. Sustainable industrial relation in the light of the ethos of this country. We are talking of this country first. Let's not talk about others. In this country, what do we look at as labor? Today, we have a wonderful gentleman standing in front of us trying to take a photograph of all of us and a videograph. We do not know what his contract is. We do not know what are the benefits he's going to get at the end of his 58th year or 59th year of birth. God knows. All of us have some kind of people to support us at home. We can't call them million servants anymore. They are our support systems. If we don't have them, we are not there. And if we are not there, they are not there. Look at the kind of thing that we have to go. You know what Shekhar was saying about how do we have this relationship between the labor and the so-called, we call ourselves management. I look at it more humanity, as a human. We are not robots anymore. Robots will not listen to us also. You fire a robot, what will it go to do? Nothing. Human mind is different. Human aspect is different. Therefore, laws, if any, to be made for industrial relations, I'm talking of one gamut of it, that is labor. I haven't come to the others, it's just the labor. Unless and until there is some congeniality between the labor and the management, things don't happen. You want to have a fight? All right. There's a big court out there. There's a judge waiting for you. Start all kinds of disputes. After all, human mind is so active. For every sentence you can have a dispute. We've seen evidence being recorded. We've seen cross-examinations going on over small, trivial issues. I'll give you an example. When I was appearing for the Karnataka State Road Transport Corporation, a large workforce of drivers and conductors, because that's the only job they have. Cross-examining somebody, one of the drivers. The fellow was just not willing to admit anything. There was a need for some humor, otherwise, it was too hot. The whole thing was hot. Everybody is asking questions and the fellow is not giving us proper answers. So we had to bring in a little bit of pun there. So, as you were saying, arguing, and the cross-examination was going on, I asked him, "Are you Puttanna?" He said, "No." He was told by his lawyer that you should never say yes to any cross-examination. This is the way things went on those days. But of course, now I'm told that kind of cross-examination doesn't happen and number of disputes have considerably reduced. And the corporation was telling me the other day that, the hustle-bustle of courts in labor courts have all come down. Now there seems to be something more than that. It's only about the benefits that the employees are to be given, and this is more of a stronghold of trade unionism. Be that as it may, you see, the first things that I thought of telling you all is we do have to understand as to what is industrial relation. How do we define this? What do we say? How do we comprehend an industrial relation? According to me, and my kind of experience I have noticed, it is a multidisciplinary field. What does it do? One, it studies employment relationship. This is called, you may also call it employee relationship. It's both employment relationship and employee relationship. The reason is twofold. One is non-industrial relationships. Non-industrial employment relationship, broadening of human resource management trend. So when you think of industrial relation, the first thing I would say is human resource management. There are so many authors writing about human resource management. And any number of them, you can get them on internet. It's not a difficulty at all. Each one giving a view of their own. But then, what are we going to look at in this symposium today? Employees' relations dealing only with non-unionized workers. How do we tackle this issue? Non-unionized workers. Nowadays, some of the workers don't want to affiliate themselves with any unions as such, because they have their own methods of getting their work done. Things are different nowadays. So, non-unionized workers is one set of people, and then the unionized workers are the other set. There are two different people. Some time ago, Bruce E. Kaufman said, I'll quote, "To a large degree, most scholars regard trade unionism as collective bargaining and labor management relations, and the national labor policy and labor law within which they are embedded as the core subject of the field." This is how he puts it very succinctly. It's a wonderful expression of what exactly is industrial relations, which I have found was something interesting. There's another author, V.B. Singh, who writes very nicely about what is industrial relationship. He says, industrial relations are an integral aspect of social relations arising out of employer-employee interaction in modern industries, which are regulated by the state in varying degrees in conjunction with organized social force and influenced by the existing institutions. It's a little more elaborate. He brings in not only employer and employee relationships, he adds the state also into it, and then he brings about organized social forces which influence the whole system. For this, he says, the study involves by the state of the legal system, workers and employers organizations at institutional levels, and of patterns of industrial organization including management, capital structure including technology, compensation of labor force, and study of market forces, all at the economic levels. Today, without money, nobody is going to work. I remember in days of yore, somebody would come as a small little peon in my house, and then, you know what he expected? Nothing. He would say, "Give me a job, sir. Get me a government job. I'll pay you." "No, I don't want your payment. Give me some food. I'll work for you. At the end of the day, after maybe 5 years, if you are so influential, get me into the government of Karnataka, Mysore, then get me a job." But nowadays it is not so. Nobody is willing to work free of cost because everything is economics. In today's parlance, money works. Paper money works. Not even your plastic money. So economics is an important integral part when you are looking at vis-a-vis an employee. While you are looking at the management level, again, money is an important part. Without money, you can't even start an industry. And even if you do one, you may not have the wherewithal to continue it for long. You may not have the sustainability for time to come. You may not be able to keep the number of employees with you. You may have to retrench them. You may have to terminate them, dismiss them, God knows whatever. Therefore, economics is an integral part of industrial relations. Now we'll get to a little more about how do we look at each and every aspect of industrial relation. I look at it this way. You take it on the left-hand side of yourself. You can put it under 3 important categories. 1 is employees, 2 is employers, and 3 is the government. This is on your left-hand side. You look at the other hand. You will have 3 again. Employers Association. Then you will have trade unions. And then you will have lastly courts and tribunals. These are the stakeholders. These are the stakeholders in an industrial relation. You can't look at it as a simplified organizational job because there are broader social, political, and economic terms that need to go into understanding of industrial relations. You must always put this apart from political sphere because politics has nothing to do with this. If you look at days of yore, unionism was meant for and to mean as a vote bank. Some of the political parties thought that if you have a trade union, you get at least a vote bank of say 1,000 or 2,000 people. So they started politicizing it. It happened because of, you see, the countries surrounding India at that point of time and at that distance of time. There was enough of other jurisdictions where they made use of this kind of unionism for vote bank. May not be available today. In today's scenario, it is not so. It is not so pungent as it used to be in those days. So you can't look at it, you can't look at industrial relations as simple organizational job regulation. In issues such as trade unionism, collective bargaining, strikes, you see, there are very serious things that need to be considered depending upon not just the individuals who are there, but the wisdom of everybody who gets into kind of getting the industrial relation started or sustained. So the people who go behind it are also important equally in order to understand what exactly is industrial relation if we are looking at Make in India. You can't have the old systems to continue. You need to have some kind of a change. And this change must be sizable. There must be a change management, as I put it. Change management in your understanding, in your attitude, in your entire system itself. Sustainable industrial relations, what the present government proposes, has resulted in implementing various changes to various labor laws. All this is because the government of India now thinks they must improve the ease of doing business, thanks to the kind of competition that we have inside and outside our country. So there must be an ease of doing business. Why? Because they must attract investments from outside the country as well. Today, if we are looking at FDIs bringing in their money, without their money, we don't have global presence. So there was a need to bring in this, and therefore the government of India thought fit. If you are going to make some change, bring about this Make in India so that we have investments coming from abroad, start the manufacturing activity here in India, ensure that the people get employment potentials, like Mr. Shekhar was telling us just now, increase the kind of potentiality. But when we are doing all this, we should not forget that if you want, like Mr. Shekhar said, a driver, you want a driving license. It's a very simple thing. Why? It's because we have a set of officers, most incompetent fellows. All you have to do is get a medical certificate from a doctor, give it to one of the touts who is on the regional transport offices there, and the tout takes a little bit of money and then he gives you a license. Nobody knows what's happening. We don't want that kind of license holders. Imagine a huge truck and a license holder of this kind of license driving it and then going amok in society. This is where we need to bring about a change. Call the officials of the government, call those who are in the bureaucracy to be a little more vigilant. Once we are vigilant, once a candidate goes through the process of training, goes through the process, a rigorous process of some kind of a test, then you see there is somebody who comes out as a driver who is capable of handling a particular kind of LMV or whatever vehicle. So where is this problem arising? The problem arises because competent people are not in the competent places to ensure that competent people are given the licenses. I'm just giving you an example of a driver because Mr. Shekhar said today we are in dearth of drivers. The difficulty is, in this country, We have any number of engineers, we have n number of institutions, educational institutions, everything. There is nothing that is not found in this country. But unfortunately, none of them are competent enough to come and then man a particular situation. Merely holding a license is not sufficient. It may be a license to kill as well, possibly. But we need competent people. People who have the ability to discharge the functions that will be assigned to the individual. That kind of a thing is not there. All because we have a very bad educational system. Our system, educational system, is so bad that it's only a few elite people who have an understanding of what must be done are the ones alone who rise to the occasion, not everybody. We have 1.2 billion people in our country. Tell me, sir, with 1.2 billion, can you not find drivers? You can. You can find any number. But how many of them are competent enough? How many of them would you have the confidence to give them a vehicle to drive? Very few. I had a driver who was given by the government. I believed the fellow was really good. Once we had to travel to Mangalore. I said, all right, I was given an ambassador car those days. I'm talking of 2003. I was a little wary about going in an ambassador car, but nevertheless, you see, it's a government car with a beacon light on top. I thought the beacon light normally puts everybody away, and I could travel. So I relied upon this fellow. It was just a quirk of fate. The mad man didn't know how to drive at a particular speed, how to control a vehicle. The kind of confidence I had, I lost all the confidence. Then I had to do away with him. And then there was this skeptical thing. Whom do I get as a driver? After all, these guys are all appointed by the government. I don't even have a say in their appointment. How do I even believe the guy is going to drive me properly? There are issues. There are people. I'm talking of only a driver. I can tell you an umpteen number of instances, including officers, high-ranking officers who are such nincompoops, who have hardly any knowledge, who have no capacity to man a particular thing. But all of them have degrees, mind you. They have doctorates, they have degrees, they have all kinds of... I had a deputy commissioner who was a medical doctor. She said, why did you give up medicine? That was great community service than being a deputy commissioner here. Now you see what happened? One student who would have become a good doctor, he lost his seat. Another good guy who was to be a revenue officer lost his position as a deputy commissioner. Now this man wants to become a deputy commissioner and he writes his orders in such a way that it is like some of his prescriptions. Nobody can read it. So I ask him, Mister, you read what you have written. Then he looks at it, he says, I don't understand what I have written. What I'm trying to say is, look here, this education is such an important integral part of our industrial relations. Unless and until we know these guys just with a degree, it's not sufficient. You need to know his capacity. You need to know that they have something in them by which you can employ them to do a particular job. And you will be satisfied that they would have done a good job about it. So this training part and the education part is also a very, very important integral part of industrial relations. After all, in human resource development, what happens? Some HRD manager is sitting. Every day he is supposed to interview how many? If it's a big organization, maybe about 100, 150 candidates coming in almost on a daily basis. The fellow will go nuts after a week. Imagine somebody who wants to get in as a mechanical engineer in Toyota, for example. I'm sorry, I just said Toyota, for example, or any motor vehicle manufacturing unit. He's an electrical engineer. He brings in certificates and then he comes in. What does he do? He says, I have an 80% marks in my engineering. So what does the HRD manager do? He says, all right, let me see your credentials. He says, all right, you are very good in your academics, but what else do you have? I don't have anything else. So the HRD manager starts thinking. Look at the process of thinking that goes into his mind. How do I give him an appointment? How am I going to tell my boss he's a good guy? It's very difficult. It's not a simple thing. On the contrary, look at the other side, flip side of it. Somebody who comes to you with all the experience that he has something to say. Leave my academics. I have done this kind of thing. I have been working as a workforce elsewhere, and these are the certificates given to me. That's the difference that it makes. Mere degrees are of no consequence. I am in the E committee of the Supreme Court. I was asked to engage the services of computer specialists for the whole of this country. So we invited applications from almost everybody. Many of them said to be 60+%. That was the minimum qualification necessary. They all came in. In the hordes they came in, and we had to sit down. I had technical experts also along with me. I was only to look at the personality of the individual, because technically I did not know anything about it. Personality of the individual. Unfortunately, one of my colleagues who was with me, he asked one question to one person who had 80% marks from Gulbarga University. 80% in electronic engineering. He was very impressed. 80% must be something fantastic, and we were wondering, why would an 80% guy come to a high court? He should have been just sucked by either Infosys or Azim Premji or somebody like that, and he must have gone. I was skeptical, though my brother wasn't. I said, no, let's get this man. He seems to have 80%. He's a good guy. We'll put him inside this job. I said, you do your exercise. He asked him one question. I said, can you write in English one sentence saying, I would like to be retained in a job position at Bangalore. This is all that we asked him to do. We waited for 5 minutes. We gave him the paper, we gave him the pen, everything. No way. So my brother repeated it again. He said, please write this. And we thought maybe he's deaf or something like that. And we said, why don't you write? And he said, in Kannada he said, Nanu baralla sir English. Very strange. You get 80% marks and you don't know how to write in English, or even a small short sentence. So how do you get this kind of marks there? Well, we left it at that. Then we had some court managers to be recruited. There was an MBA graduate who had come, who had about 5 years of experience, teaching experience in a college. We asked him a question. He said, look here, in your college, you were teaching some students. How many students passed in your... I said, everybody passed. So 10% marks? Yeah, 10%. So he said, how does this happen? How does this happen in your university? So he said, sir, it's very simple. The management says, don't keep anybody. You pass everybody. So he says, why? Why would the management say that? He says, no, you see, otherwise students will not come in again. So fresh students would not come. Show them in the outside world that they have a 100%, 10% student pass ratio, so that new students will come in. This is the kind of thing that is going on in educational institutions. And now tell me, this is not just in your engineering, I'm talking of every faculty, every branch of education. Less said the better about doctors. Less said the better about everybody. An IAS officer who is supposed to have passed IAS, I wonder what kind of language that he deploys in his orders. I come across every day. I convince myself that there's something wrong somewhere who appoints him as an IAS officer, and that is the place where we need to change. When you adapt the same things in your industrial relations also, see what happens is, Unless the education system is perfect, you will not get a perfect individual to come and man your organizations. You will have all kinds of people who just don't understand anything to come there, and it's just by chance he does something, and by chance something happens for your industry. If at all, in every industry, we have the right kind of people at the right kind of place, there will be no sore relationship between any employee. But of course, in this country we can't expect everything to happen as we think will happen. That is why we will have to think of ways and means as to how we are going to bring about the differentiation between developed and developing economies. We are not developed. We are a developing economy. How do we bring about this differentiation? See, the contribution of organized manufacturing activity to the GDP is an important factor, which Mr. Shekhar also said. Very wonderful statement made by Mr. Shekhar. What do you contribute to the GDP? You know, in India, the contribution by the manufacturing sector is 16% of the GDP. China is receiving 1/3 of its GDP from manufacturing activity. Share of India in the manufacturing of worldwide markets is an abysmally low 1.4% in the world market. China is 13%. From what? From 2.9% 20 years ago. Just 2.9% 20 years ago, China is now leading with 13% in the worldwide market contributions. Why are we lagging in this? Put yourself a question. Toyota was never there in this country. Toyota came in very recently. Otherwise, you see, branded cars like Toyota would go for a fantastic premium. Here in India, if we're going to import that car, we have to pay 200% taxes and import it. And when we do import it, it's not the latest car, it would have been a used car only. But today we have Toyota here. There has been a sea of a difference with people from outside the country coming in to start Make in India. It's not today, it is already there. It's just that Government of India is giving it a boost today. When we are thinking of this boost, we need to ensure that the GDP, the percentage of contribution to the GDP increases. If you have to do that, your industrial relations should be as tight as watertight, you can say. That's when the labor is going to work for you. The labor will say, look here, we increased this kind of contribution to the GDP, so help me out. And I'm sure every industry would be fair enough to say, all right, we'll give you also, we'll partner it. That's the way it goes. So look at the larger aspect of things. Look at the skyline and say, can I contribute to this GDP of this country? And if I do that, I need to support all this lower rung of staff. And that is the beginning of industrial relations. So this is another aspect of understanding industrial relationship. I have dealt with this job skill mismatch. I gave you some few examples, but that's a very important thing. Job skill mismatch. 10 to 15% of regular graduates are employable, not more than that. These 10 to 15% of graduates are those who have an idea of what they have to do when they are employed. Because those skills are taught, not in colleges, are taught by themselves, by looking at people, by looking at things happening around them, by looking at what's happening around the world in different jurisdictions. So they imbibe this information, and they are only 10 to 15% and not more than that. The rest of them, sorry to say, are just degree holders. with absolutely no skills. Now, how do we drive them to have these skills? Again, you come back to the educational front. What kind of education are you going to impart? Not just pass everybody, that's not education. How good is your faculty? A person who passed out of college joins the very same college as a faculty member. I wonder what happens to that faculty. And if all of them are in that faculty, you can imagine what can happen to the education that is imparted to these youngsters who are 20% of the world population in India. Youngsters between the age group of 18 to 22, by the year 2020, will be 20% of the world population. Imagine, just imagine, sir, what is going to happen to this country. What a workforce. It's phenomenal. But then you should also know that there are these countries who want to divide us. They know this workforce is coming up. China has more than 80% of old people. They have no youngsters. They want to destabilize us. I will share with you, being a member of the National Legal Services, I'll share with you a very disturbing information. 65% of youngsters in Punjab and Haryana are drug addicts. That's the first stage. Karnataka, Bangalore is not very far off. 35% of the youngsters are drug addicts in Bangalore. You know what is the age group? 7 to 16. Believe me. At age 7, they have become drug addicts in Bangalore. Destabilization. Why? Because our educational institutions don't even know what's happening to a child. Our faculty members don't even know what is to be done to a child. How do you bring he or her out of this situation? Finally, if they have the kind of wherewithal, they will get a degree, no doubt. But of what use? So we have to strengthen the education system. We have to strengthen the core values of these people. What are the core values? When a job is assigned to you, you are supposed to have all the required ingredients to man it. How do you teach the child? How do you teach a graduate? How do you teach a person? Because after all, it's a labor force in different forms. It's a very important aspect which all of us look the other side. What do I do at home? I have 2 daughters. I tell them, you become doctor, you become engineer. The pressure of the parents is so high. One is going to say, Dad, I don't want to be a doctor. But I say, no, you have to become a doctor because your auntie is a doctor, your uncle is a doctor. They are manning a huge hospital. You can also become, have a hospital of your own. Then I have another daughter who says, no, I don't want to be an engineer. No, you have to be an engineer because your uncle was the chief engineer. These kind of things have to go. If you're going to push somebody into all this and then make them engineers and doctors, there will be a misfit. You're not going to get the right kind of people to come and enter into your organizations. So finally, what does the FDI do? Even if he comes and starts an industry here, he doesn't have anybody who is capable of handling in our country. So what does he do? He goes to other countries. Let us all accept, it's not hypocrisy, let us all accept the cream of the society, cream of all the youngsters, the cream of the persons who are well educated are all outside this country. They are either in London, in England, or they are in the United States of America. Very few of them want to be back in India, but most of them are there. And why does the US take all these people? The US, after this Make in India came, there was a WhatsApp information. They said, Make in India and send them to US. Very unfair, very unfair. I know a large population of most of my peers who were all engineers and doctors. I was the only one who took up to law. All of them are outside the country, none here. All of them have left this country. And we all know for good reason. We also know that the kind of pressures that the government put on them, they are not willing to play footsie with anybody here. They want to lead a peaceful life, go about their job as skilled workers. It's only because of the Indians in the United States that you find something coming out of the United States. Otherwise, there's nothing there. If you ask a doctor, an American doctor, he says, I have 8 hours of job. I come in at this time, I walk out at this time. Do what may, you may. It's only the Indian doctors who do moonlighting. They say, it's all right. We are humans. It's okay, we'll work another 2 hours more. Pays the same salary. It's all right, no problem. But why? The keen interest. Because you see, we have developed and inculcated in them a sense of daring as to what you must do when a job is assigned to you. But all of them have gone out of the country. And what do we have here? The ones who are mavericks, who refuse to listen to whatever you ask for. The moment you ask something, I become a trade union leader. Why? I want to oppose you. Why do you want to oppose me? Because I want to oppose you. There is no rhyme or reason. Don't make me work. I have better things to do. This is the kind of philosophy that has gone into them. This is the kind of understanding that these people have. How do you bring them out? This is a change management which the HRD must do. HRD is the kingpin in every industry. If you man them with the right kind of people, I will tell you, your industrial relations will be smooth. If you man them with somebody nincompoops, your industry is in big trouble. So when I started with HRD. HRD is the most important thing. So you come back to the same stage. Stage A, how do you employ people with skills which will match the job that is available with you? A very important ingredient. The next and important thing that I thought was, there is this agricultural myth in our country. Ours is agricultural based economy, that's what they said years ago. But today, their contribution is less than 50% to the GDP. Less than 50%. It's going down by the day. Agricultural economy was the mainstay of this country. The contribution in GDP is less than 50%. And with the industry and services, this contribution by employment figures, I'm talking of employment figures now, has risen by 6%. Employment figures in the industry, though it's an agricultural based economy, is only 6%. Therefore, the need is we should continue to employ more and more people in the agricultural front. You know why? Because we need to think of growth of industry as well. These are two things that the balance has to be done. Agricultural background is always there. If you go to a village in anywhere down south in Karnataka, the guy is not educated. What does he say? He says, my father has left behind 2 acres of land, and all that I know is how to cultivate this land. So I am going to cultivate this land. I don't know what I am going to do. He does not want to think out of the box. He does not want to say, look here, I have others who will continue this job of agriculture, but I go outside. I try to eke out my livelihood outside. He doesn't want to do that. He's stuck with his job. And thanks to the government acquiring large tracts of land, and finally he's left nothing. I know of families who held this small 2 or 3 acres of land are today, after having lost their land, today, you know where they are? They're washing vessels. They're washing vessels in houses. Look at the plight of these people. We cannot look the other side. Agricultural part of economy is the most important thing. Toyota Kirloskar wants 100 acres of land. KIDB is willing to play footsie with the Toyota. Takes 100 acres of land of the farmers. What does the farmer do? All right, you pay him 40 lakhs per acre. What skill does he have to play with his 40 lakhs of rupees? Does he know anything about stocks? Does he know anything about shares? Does he know how to invest his money into something which will grow? Sir, nothing. You know, there is that saying, a fool parts with his money very easily. That's precisely what happens to these agriculturists. They lose their money and finally nothing. They have no skills. They have lost their money. They have lost their soul. They have lost everything. Can we look the other side when we are talking of industrial relations? Can we say, I took his land and I'm not bothered about him? I went to Raipur, Navi Raipur in Chhattisgarh. I was invited there. 3,500 acres of land purchased for Navi Raipur. It's a new township of Raipur in Chhattisgarh. One must go visit to understand what exactly they are doing. There is not one case of land acquisition in the courts in Raipur, but 3,500 acres of land taken for development activity, educational institutions, industries, residential, commercial, social. They've done everything. How is it possible? I asked one of those deputy commissioners, I said, how did you do this? The divisional commissioner was so clear. He said, look here, sir, we just took them into confidence. We saw how many acres each one had. We said, in a family, we will give you one employment. Skilled, no skilled, whatever. We'll give you one employment. We will take your land. We'll pay you for it also. They did not break the houses. They retained those small little islands. You know what they did? Cement concrete pavement by the industrial people. The industries which want to come and set up there, they said, we will do the pavement for these people. So they went about cement concreting the roads. Underground drainages, STPs installed, electrical connections given, water supply made available at their homes. The thatched roofs were removed and RCC roofs were added. Made life easy for them. This is relationship. If you give one person a job in your industry, I will tell you that fellow will keep your photograph and I don't know. So on the agriculture side, when industries start coming in huge numbers, take lots of land for their purposes, the first and foremost thing they must also think of is, how do we bring these people into the whole scheme of activity? We don't want to lose them. At the same time, we don't want to lose out as well. We want to develop. This country must develop. We need to come forward. We need to be competitive in the international market. We need to get people to come from outside and then create this kind of an industrial revolution here. So we need to do all this. Industrial relation includes something to do for the agriculture as well. The success of this Make in India will be, in my opinion, if you review the labor laws. Now I'm coming to the labor laws. How do you review the labor laws? My suggestions. First suggestion, better and regular communication between workers and top management for educating both sides, and building a trust, motivation, and a commitment to the company. You see this word commitment to the company, such an important thing. Way back when I was practicing law, I remember of a statement made in a Japanese company. That was a devastated country after the Second World War. When there was a large workforce in some of those battery manufacturing, these dry cell manufacturing companies. The first thing they would do in the morning was, when they went there, they would pray, not to God, but to their employer. They would pray that their employer's well-being, so that the employees continue to work there and do something good. It's not strange. We all do it, but we do it for ourselves. But we don't do it for the employer. We need to have a change in that attitude. There was a strike in one of those factories where they used to manufacture boots. When the strike went on, they said, we will not strike work. What we will do is, we will manufacture the boots of only one leg, the left leg. See, how does this happen? It happens only when you educate them. When you educate them to see that there must be a commitment to the factory, commitment to the industry, commitment to the nation. Unless you have this commitment, unless you bring in this commitment, unless you drive it into them, where is Make in India? It will not happen. If you want it to happen, you must drive in commitment, sir. When does commitment happen? When you are on par with their understanding. Educate them, bring them up to certain levels, give them an understanding, and do this. This is the first suggestion. The second, investments in skilled workers. Not just investing, but retain them. You see, retaining them is the most important thing. What we have as contract labor system today, the contract labor laws, is of no use. We need to redo the whole laws on contract labor. I had a stenographer while I was practicing law. Very efficient fellow. If I said one sentence, he would write the second sentence. He knew me so well. He knew what I was trying to say. One day, one of the companies who was my client, saw this fellow's extraordinary talent. And on the fourth day, the fellow never turned up to my office. Because I had no contract with him. Lawyers don't make contracts with their employees. When I found out he was already with one of my clients, and then my client called me and said, I'm so sorry, he's such an efficient fellow, I thought he was not doing well in your place, so I took him away. I said, all right, if God desired that the fellow should go there, it's all right, he can go. What I'm trying to say is, a skilled worker, when you train him after many years, you must not try to lose him, you must hold him. Because he knows you better than anything else. This is quite an important thing. You will find this kind of a thing happening in all your electronic industries. Computer engineer, pretty good at his job, gets trained in the process of doing his job. Then what happens? There is some other bigger company who wants his presence. So what does he do? He simply sucks him inside, gives him something more as perks. Because he is a trained person. Nowadays, where do you get trained people? Everybody comes in as a maverick, tries to learn something and then gets trained. You car driver anta tokondre, he will train himself in your car. Same thing happens to every industry here. The moment you take somebody, he starts training himself, and then once he knows he's grown a little bit beyond his boots, he says, to hell with you, I'm going elsewhere. So the relationship, the laws should be such that, you see, you should have the power to retain such kind of people. I was trying to make a contract for developing a software for the High Court, because we are dearth of software. And it's all, you see, the old systems, the British, we have the legacy of the British. We have 10 fellows writing the same thing in 10 registers. So we wanted to cut down all that and then bring about some sort of software. So we put out a tender and we got some people to come over. And then we asked them, how do you propose to make this software? So those guys said, we have so-and-so excellent persons, their credentials were given, we are going to engage them. We said, all right, that's good. What if after some time we decide that we want him? And then they said, all right, if you want him, you can take him. I said, what about your company? No, now that we know that you want him, we will ensure we don't train him and then we'll allow him to be with you. So we had to put a rider there. We had to put a clause in the agreement and say, you will not send him away. That fellow will not resign from your organization. And we will not take him into our fold. Until and unless the software is developed and completely put into use in our organization. Now these things happen. I'm trying to tell you, it's an order of the day. Every day we are seeing it. But in government services, what happens is, they seem to have some kind of leverage. That is, they have this employment which is guaranteed. They know they cannot be terminated so easily. So even if they don't work, they continue to be in employment. I had an occasion to deal with some service matters. My experience, I'm trying to tell you. This was a person who was really too good in his credentials. He had applied for a government service and then he didn't get the employment. So he had challenged the employment which was given to somebody else who was not up to that mark in the sense academically. So the lawyer was very candid in his statement. He said, sir, I have 65% marks. The person who is employed has got only 50% marks. So I said, why were you not selected? I mean, that's the next question that will arise. Why were you not selected? He said, no. When I went to the interview, the interviewer asked him, he said, have you any disabilities? So this fellow was a little wary. He said, why would he ask me why I have disabilities when I have none? So he said, no, none. I can work. He said, then you are unfit. He said, why am I unfit? He said, no, we want people who are disabled. We don't want you in government service. And that's government service. The whole idea of government service is different. The whole idea of private service is different. So our labor laws on the private side need a revamping. Need a revamping to invest in skills of workers, retain them, and remove these contract labor laws that are presently existing, which only gives a lever to the government and the officers of the government to trouble the managements. I have seen enough of Section 10 of the labor abolition laws. I have seen enough of the orders passed by the Secretary of Labor. Ultimately, you go back to zero. Every time I send it back, he writes a letter, he writes an order, and again it comes back before me. Absolutely no application of mine. Unless you change the laws to be more objective, to be more rational, to be more, in the sense, don't give the discretion to these bureaucrats to act or have a lever. Nothing happens. So you need to change the labor laws. The third important thing which I thought is important, which I would say, law should be flexible to deal with fluctuations in production needs. Unless there is this flexibility, whenever there is this production need, you suddenly get, you say like all of us, we decided to buy a car. So we wanted to know what car. We are about 60 judges. We want what car? Each one giving new ideas. We would like to have the high-end Skoda car. Or another gentleman said high-end Toyota car. And then Camry, something like that. All these names, the big names. And then finally we said, we're buying 60 cars, so we need to do something about it. And finally we decided, I know, Shekhar knows about it. We decided to buy Innovas. So, look at the way the industry progresses. Now he has to manufacture 60 cars for us. So there is a need for him. There is this sudden surge of interest of people to buy cars. Now he needs to do something. If you have rigid laws, how does he cope with the situation today? Perhaps few engineers now suddenly to be employed, skilled engineers, skilled workmen, he needs to give it within time. So how is he going to do it? At the same time, he has to provide for the public as well. These are situations that might arise. I'm trying to give you one example, many examples that may come across. He might get an order from Brazil because you are international. You may get an order from Brazil for about 1,000 cars. Where is the employment potential? How do you deal with such a situation? Oh, imagine your trade union leader, what he will do. The moment he comes to know, he's got a big order. If it is a rigid law, you will not be able to do anything. So that flexibility in law, if it is maintained, it will help the industry, and it will help come over the situation. The fourth point is opportunity for career growth of workers. You see, if a man comes in as a peon at age, say, 20 years, and at the age 60 he retires as a peon, what has he done in his life? Except carrying water from this place to that place. He's done nothing. Unless you give him some incentive, you incentivize his work, you give him training, you help him, assist him in giving some kind of a thing so that he elevates himself from a peon to something else or graduates himself to something else. What we do in the High Court is, we say, look here, you are just a graduate in BSc. Why don't you do law? Why don't you graduate in law? We will give you some time. Take 5 years off. 5 years off means, in 5 years you can complete your 3-year law and then come back to us. Not only an increment, we'll give you a position higher because you know a little bit of law and a little bit of writing. The skills improve. So you see, nearly 75% of our employees decided to do law. We have all our court officers who are law graduates today. This is the kind of enhancements that will help a worker to have the incentive to work in your organization. So you incentivize and give him an opportunity for growth in that career of his. Then the fifth point that I'd like to make is guidelines for payment of bonus so that productivity and teamwork is encouraged. You see, I have found many a case on bonus. 2 guys will do the job, 10 guys will take the bonus. You must ensure that the teamwork is given. Put all of them into a team. Make them all work. So that this bonus that you can pay to them is not just because of one person's workforce. It is the workforce of that whole team. This I found in many a case, therefore it occurred to me and I thought I will make this as one of those points. The sixth important point is trade union laws that restrict proliferation of unions and their politicization. This is important because trade unions, as it is, we have the Indian Trade Union Act that we have 7 persons can register a trade union. there are certain restrictions by which 7 people may not go directly. They may be induced by a politician to do it. They may be induced by the management itself to constitute a fresh trade union of their own. Why? Because you need competition even in the trade unions. We have seen that happening. I have seen it happening in many an industry where I appeared. The moment there is, in a referendum, some trade union comes up, gets more number of votes, there's already a planning going on, how do we subdue this? To make another trade union. So this trade unionism as such will begin at 2-3 different levels. That must go. There must be freedom to have this trade union. More the number, more the merrier. When there are more in number, you see there are all fractured elements. The whole thing is fractured. There will be 10 fellows in one union, there will be another 100 fellows in another union, there will be 50 fellows in another union. They're all fractured. What happens is, that is when you will find all of them coming in to talk to you, to grapple with you. If it is only one, those fellows will sit pretty. They will say, nothing doing. Whatever I say is final. You can't do anything about it. So make it much more freedom. Give them freedom to make a trade union. Allow them to have their say. Allow them to become trade unionists. Allow them to grow as trade unionists. Nothing wrong. Educate them. Give them that power of education. Give them the power of understanding, commitment. All this you do and give them the freedom of trade union. I will tell you, my opinion, it's going to go a long way. Number 7. Transparency and use of technology for ensuring compliance with all important safeguards and benefits to labor. Use of technology, I have said, the best thing is to have a software in almost every field of activity in these industries, which cuts down on any kind of discretion that is exercised by any officer in the hierarchy in an industry. I know of a HRD manager who had an axe to grind against a particular officer. God bless, he harassed him so much. The fellow left the organization and went away. The management knew nothing about it because management was oblivious. They said, here's an HRD manager who's doing all the job, so why do we even bother about it? Such kind of things happen. Therefore, transparency in every action of yours with the use of technology for ensuring compliance with all important safeguards and benefits to labor. Give them all the benefits. Put it on your website. These are the benefits that you have given to everybody. Don't make it special to certain people only. I have noticed that has been done. So I thought this is one of those important ingredients. And the last of the thing, the 8th point that I'd like to make. Minimization of the need for outside physical inspections. You know, in all these labor laws, that you find the ESI fellow coming into your office. Then you have the PF fellow walking into your office on a regular basis. And we all know why they come. There's nothing new. We are not hypocrites. I was manning my uncle's petrol bunk way back in 1973, before I entered the law college. I had an occasion. My uncle went out of the country, so he said, for 30 days you look after my petrol pump. So I said, okay. I had finished my graduation. So I sat in the bunk. On the first day, there was a lot of money coming in, because I had not seen that kind of money any which way. Petrol, everybody buys petrol, they give us money. So I had to collect it and then take it to the bank, and of course there was a manager come and all those fellows. As I was sitting one day in the afternoon, this manager comes to me and says, sir, put 200 rupees in the cover and please give it to me. So I said, why should I give it to you? You got the money, you go and pay it or do whatever you want to whomsoever you want and account for it. He said, no sir, this I cannot account, I can't put it in the account, but you only have to keep this account, put 200 in the cover. This person is coming, you give it to him. I I said, look, my uncle is not going to keep quiet. He doesn't like all these things. No, he said, no, your uncle would do it every day, every month. Then I said, okay, let me see. Let me test this fellow. He came. He said he is from the ESI. So I said, so what if you are from the ESI? Take my books, read it. Everything is perfect. I have not done anything hanky-panky here. Then he tells my manager, you are Wasabra, ಹೌದಪ್ಪ ನಾನು ಹೊಸಬ್ರೇನ, ನನಗೇನೋ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಇದ್ರ ವಿಚಾರ, ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ಆ ಕವರ್ ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಡಿ, ನನಗೆ ಟೈಮ್ ಆಯಿತು, ಎಲ್ಲ ಬೇರೆ ಕಡೆ ಹೋಗಬೇಕು. I said, well, this is how this country progresses. This is kind of intervention that happens at the hands of bureaucrats. This kind of inspection Raj must go. There is no need. Once you are transparent, once you put it on your website, once you say these are my accounts, once you say this is what I have paid to the ESI and PF as being contributions made by both the employer and employee, what more does anybody need? There is no need for an inspection at all, if you are right. There was a policeman, I remember very distinctly. He came on his scooter. Then this manager came and told me, sir, ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ 5 ಲೀಟರ್ ಪೆಟ್ರೋಲ್ ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಡ್ಬೇಕು ಈ ತಿಂಗಳಿಗೆ, ಅದು ನಾವು ಫ್ರೀ ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ. I said, nothing doing, I'm not going to anything free. Why should I pay him free? After all, he is getting a salary paid by the government, I'm not going to give him. He said, ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ರಾತ್ರಿ ಗಲಾಟೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ ನಮಗೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದು ಯಾರನ್ನಾರು ಕಳಿಸ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ. ಯಾರು ಕಳಿಸಿದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಇರೋದು ಏನಕ್ಕೆ, ಬೀಗ ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ರಪ್ಪ, ನೀವು ರಾತ್ರಿ ಹೊತ್ತು ಏನು ಇಡಬೇಡ್ರಿ. I mean, it was impractical approach that I thought of. At that, you see, that was the time when I was belligerent. I said, no, I don't want all these things. Now in retrospect, I can say I must have just kept quiet. It would have been better. But then he came. Then I said, see, you do one thing, don't come today, I will talk to my uncle. Tomorrow you come and take your 5 liters of petrol if he agrees. I said, all right. He came next day. He came with his daughter, small child, sitting on the pillion ride. The child is looking at the guy pouring the 5 liters of petrol. The guy starts the vehicle, he makes his child sit and he says, let's go. So I said, hey, wait a minute, bring him here. He comes inside. Hey, sir, ಯಾರದು ಹಿಂದೆ ಕೂತಿದ್ದು? ನನ್ನ ಮಗಳು ಸರ್. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮಗಳು ಏನು ನೋಡಿದ್ರು ಇವತ್ತು? 5 ಲೀಟರ್ ಪೆಟ್ರೋಲ್ ನೀವು ಹಾಕ್ಸ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರಿ, ಬೇರೆಯವ್ರನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ನೋಡಿದ್ಲು, ದುಡ್ಡು ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದು, ನೀವೇನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ? ಅವಳೇನು ಅನ್ಕೋಬೇಕು? ನಮ್ಮಪ್ಪ ಎಲ್ಲೋದ್ರೂ ದುಡ್ಡೇ ಖರ್ಚು ಮಾಡಿ. See the kind of thing that went into the mind of the child. If my father comes, I can buy anything, I don't have to pay for it. Is this the culture that we are going to teach the children? See, these are experiences, that make you perfect when you see all these things. Therefore, what I am trying to say is, look here, engage people who are out of all these things. Even in a private industry, if I take for example a hotel industry here, there's a manager who is for purchases. What if he purchases something at a particular price, which might be higher in the market or lower in the market, depending upon the discretion that is vested in him? Therefore, the need for commitment, the commitment to this industry, the commitment to my employer, the commitment that I will not be tempted to do something which is not right. Why? Why has this commitment arisen? Because this employee has seen the employer paying some fellow who has come for inspection something. A labor inspector may have come here and he might have seen him, what he would have got here. Because the employer here does not want any trouble from any source. Why is this trouble from any source? Because the laws are made like that. The laws are made for these officers to come, create confusion. We need to cut that. Remove those laws. Make it more transparent. Give effect to the laws in a transparent manner where these people need not come to you at all. that is the kind of transformation in the laws itself must take place. We need to do a lot of thinking on these issues. I have many other things, but I know my time has already run out. Maybe some other time I will try to mention about what challenges India is facing today, according to my understanding of industrial relations in this country. But for the time being, if all of you can work on these 8, give a thought to these 8 ideas that I have stated, I'm certain we will be going in some proper direction at least. If not, I don't say that it is the perfect direction that I have given you, but I can only say a proper direction for all of you to think, to comprehend and develop on all these things, because tomorrow, whatever deliberations that are going to take place here today might become an important facet of the lawmaking itself at the hands of the parliamentarians. I thank all of you and the organizers to have given me this wonderful time to say something about what industrial relations are in my perspective. It's just an opinion of mine. My opinion, some of you may not be quite in tune with my opinion, but it doesn't matter. Opinions are opinions, and all of you can discuss other opinions as well. I thank all of you.